Do you sometimes feel like you are being watched in your home? Sometimes the things we bring into our lives carry a darker history than we imagine. In this terrifying collection, we explore the fine line between childhood innocence and demonic attachment. This video presents two true stories of supernatural horror that blur the boundaries of reality. These are not just stories about toys. Rather, they are a deep dive into horror and true supernatural mystery. From a mother racing against time to save her daughter from a ceramic vessel full of evil, to a nursing student who realizes her antique gift is a channel for a demonic entity. These stories will make you rethink everything in your bedroom. If you are a fan of Reddit NoSleep or real terrifying encounters or mysterious puzzles, this collection is designed to keep you awake all night. Listener discretion is advised. My daughter named her Lilibet, a porcelain doll with vacant blue eyes and rosebud lips, a gift from my grandmother's estate. The very first night I heard humming coming from Amelia's room. It was a nursery rhyme I didn't recognize. Amelia's tiny hand was wrapped around the doll's porcelain fingers. Things started to move, small things at first. I once found Amelia's favorite blanket stuffed in the freezer, cold and stiff. Then the smells began. Old perfume and damp soil, the exact scent of my grandmother's house the day we had to clear it out. I'd find her having conversations with Lilibet in the corner of her room, whispering in a language that sounded like broken glass and forgotten words. Whenever I'd ask her what they were talking about, she'd just smile that strange new smile and say, "Grandma's stories, but my grandmother died 10 years ago." I dreamed of porcelain fingers scraping slowly, methodically against my bedroom door. And every single morning, Lilibet would be in a new position. The next, her face would be pressed hard against the window, watching the world outside. I decided I had to take the doll away. It seemed like a simple, logical solution. But when I tried, Amelia's scream wasn't human. It was a raw, animal sound that shook the windows in their frames. "She says you can't keep us apart," she shrieked. That's when I saw it, the first lock of hair, a perfect blonde curl, Amelia's curl, wrapped tightly around Lilibet's porcelain neck like a tiny noose. I grabbed the doll, ignoring Amelia's desperate cries, and took her to the attic. I boxed her up with old Christmas decorations and a mountain of regret. That night, the scratching started, but it wasn't coming from the attic door. It was coming from inside the walls. Amelia stopped eating. She would just sit at the dinner table, her head tilted slightly, as if she were listening to a voice only she could hear. Her eyes, once a bright, vibrant blue, just like her mother's, turned flat and glassy. Just like the doll's, I felt like I was losing her, watching her fade away right in front of me. The final straw was the photograph. I was cleaning out her backpack, looking for old homework, and I found it. A Polaroid picture of Amelia sleeping in her bed. It was taken from inside her closet, and in the corner of the frame I could just make out a porcelain hand resting gently on her shoulder. I drove to the public library in a panic, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I spent hours digging through dusty archives and scrolling through microfiche. And then I found it. My grandmother's name in a newspaper article from 1953. The headline read, "Local girl questioned in playmate's disappearance. Her best friend, a little girl named Elizabeth, had vanished during a game of hide and seek." When questioned, my grandmother claimed that Elizabeth just hid too well, that the porcelain lady took her. The police never found the girl. All they found was a single porcelain doll, abandoned in the woods where Elizabeth was last seen. The attic door was wide open. The box I had sealed so carefully was on the floor, torn open. It was empty. I found them there. My daughter was sitting on the floor, sewing. She was stitching Lilibet's arm to her own, threading a needle through cold porcelain and warm skin. Amelia looked up at me, but it wasn't my daughter's voice that came out of her mouth. It was a low, raspy whisper. Amelia's scream tore through the house, a sound of pure agony, and then she just went limp, collapsing onto the rug. They didn't see what I saw. They didn't hear that voice. A small apartment with no attics, no basements, no dark closets. She just sits in her chair, her head tilted, listening. It's faint, far away, like a memory drifting on the wind. Lavender's blue, dilly-dilly. Lavender's green. When I am king, dilly-dilly, you shall be queen. A flicker of porcelain in the dark, waiting for me to sleep, waiting to finish what she started. Some heirlooms should never be passed down. I need you to understand something before I begin. This is not a story I tell lightly, and it is not one I have ever told in full. Not even to the investigators, not even to the priest who came to bless the apartment after everything was over. If you can call it over, because some nights I still wake up at 3 in the morning, my heart slamming against my ribs, convinced I can hear the scratching of a pen on paper coming from somewhere in the dark. My name is Donna, and in the spring of 1970, I was 20 years old, living in a small apartment near the nursing school where I was finishing my second year of training. I shared that apartment with my roommate Angie, who was also a nursing student, and my friend Lou, who spent more time at our place than her own. The three of us were inseparable back then, young and full of that reckless confidence that comes from not yet knowing what the world can do to you. The apartment was nothing special. 2 bedrooms, a cramped kitchen, windows that looked out onto a parking lot, but it was ours, our first taste of independence, and we loved it. We decorated it with posters and thrift store furniture. We stayed up late studying anatomy and pharmacology. We laughed too loud and played music too late and thought we had our whole lives figured out. I remember the exact day my mother gave me the doll. It was a Saturday in late February. She had driven up from our hometown to visit me, to see how I was doing, to make sure I was eating enough, the usual mother things. She brought groceries and homemade soup and tucked under her arm a Raggedy Ann doll. I looked at it with confusion. I was 20 years old, far too old for dolls. But my mother pressed it into my hands with that look she got when she wanted me to just accept something without asking questions. She is for luck, my mother said. I found her at an antique shop. The woman there said she needed a good home, and I thought of you all alone up here. I am not alone, I said. I have Angie. I have Lou. My mother waved her hand dismissively. You know what I mean? Put her on your bed. She will watch over you. I did not want to hurt my mother's feelings, so I thanked her and took the doll. After she left, I set it on a chair in the corner of my bedroom and promptly forgot about it. The doll was about 3 feet tall, larger than most Raggedy. As I had seen, she had the traditional red yarn hair, the triangle nose, the black button eyes, but something about her face seemed different. The smile painted on her cloth face looked off, as if whoever had stitched her had gotten the proportions slightly wrong. The corners of her mouth curved up just a little too high, giving her an expression that looked less like joy and more like anticipation. But I told myself I was being ridiculous. It was just a doll, fabric and stuffing and thread, nothing more. The first strange thing happened about a week later. I came home from a late shift at the hospital, where I was doing my clinical rotations. It was past midnight. Angie was already asleep. The apartment was dark and quiet. I dropped my bag by the door and headed to my room. The doll was not on the chair where I had left her. She was sitting on my bed, propped up against the pillows, facing the door, as if she had been waiting for me. My stomach did something strange, a kind of flip, but I forced myself to breathe. Angie, I thought. Angie must have moved her, maybe as a joke. Maybe she had been cleaning. There had to be a rational explanation. I picked up the doll and put her back on the chair, pushing her into the corner, facing the wall this time. I did not want those button eyes watching me while I slept. The next morning I asked Angie if she had been in my room. Angie looked at me like I had lost my mind. "Why would I go in your room?" she said. "I was asleep by 9. I let it go. Maybe I had moved the doll myself and forgotten. Maybe I had been more tired than I realized. Nursing school was exhausting. My memory was not always reliable, but it happened again 3 days later, and then again and again. Every time I left the apartment, the doll would move. I would find her in different positions, different locations. Once she was sitting in the living room on the couch. Once she was in the kitchen, propped against a sugar jar. Once I found her standing in the hallway, leaning against the wall as if she had been walking somewhere and stopped to rest. I started to feel sick every time I put my key in the lock, dreading what I would find, dreading where she would be. I told Angie and Lou about it, expecting them to laugh, expecting them to confess to pranking me, but their faces went pale. "We have not touched her," Lou said. "I swear to God, Donna, neither of us has touched that thing." Lou, who was not easily frightened. Lou, who watched horror movies and laughed. Lou was scared. I could see it in the way her hands trembled as she lit a cigarette. "Then prove it," I said. "Prove none of us are moving her, so we designed a test. We put the doll in Angie's room, closed the door, and marked the door with a piece of tape. If anyone opened it, the tape would break. Then the 3 of us left the apartment together and went to the movies. We were gone for almost 4 hours. When we came back, my heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. We stood outside Angie's door. The tape was still intact. No one had opened it. Lou reached out and pushed the door open. The doll was not where we had left her. We had placed her on Angie's desk, facing the window, but now she was on the floor, in the middle of the room, and she was facing the door, those black button eyes staring up at us. Angie screamed. I did not scream. I could not. My throat had closed up. My body had gone cold from the inside out, like someone had poured ice water directly into my veins. Lou grabbed my arm so hard she left bruises, her fingernails digging into my skin, but I barely felt it. All I could do was stare at that doll, at that wrong smile, at those empty black eyes. "Get rid of it," Angie whispered. "Donna, you have to get rid of it." But I did not. God help me, I did not, because the next day something even stranger happened. I came home to find a piece of paper next to the doll, a piece of my own notebook paper, and on it, written in red crayon, were 2 words, "Help me." I stood there for a long time, just staring at those words, my mind trying to process what I was seeing. The handwriting was shaky, childlike. like a small hand had gripped the crayon too tightly. I had not written it. Angie swore she had not written it. Lou had not been to the apartment in 2 days. Help me. Help who? Help the doll. Was someone trapped inside that thing? Was this a cry for help from something or someone I could not see? I should have thrown her away right then. I should have burned her, but something stopped me. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the nursing student in me, the part that had been trained to help people. Even if this was not a person, even if this was something I did not understand, the notes continued. Every few days I would find another one. Sometimes they said help me. Sometimes they said help Lou. Sometimes they just had a word, a single word like miss or sad or hurt. Each one written in that same shaky handwriting. Each one in red crayon. Help me. Where was the crayon coming from? I did not own any crayons. I searched the apartment. I searched the doll. I found nothing. Lou started to fall apart. She had always been the strong one, the one who kept us grounded, but something about the notes with her name on them, something about being singled out by whatever this was, it broke something in her. She stopped sleeping, stopped eating. She would sit in our living room for hours, just staring at the doll, watching, waiting. "Do you think it is trying to warn me?" she asked one night, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think something bad is going to happen to me?" I did not know what to say. I did not know anything anymore. The world I thought I understood, the rational world of science and medicine and observable facts, that world had crumbled, and I was left standing in the rubble, trying to make sense of the impossible. We called a medium. I know how that sounds, I know, but we were desperate. We had tried everything. We had prayed. We had yelled at the doll. We had locked her in a trunk and she still moved, still wrote those terrible notes. The medium was a woman named Mrs. Beth. She was in her 60s, with gray hair and kind eyes and hands that shook when she touched the doll. She held Raggedy Ann for a long time, her eyes closed, her lips moving slightly, like she was having a conversation I could not hear. Finally, she opened her eyes, and her face was wrong. All the color had drained from it. She looked like she had seen something that had aged her 10 years in 10 minutes. "There is a spirit attached to this doll," she said, her voice thin and reedy. "A girl, a young girl. She says her name is Annabel." My blood went cold. "Annabel," I repeated. "Who is Annabel?" Mrs. Beth shook her head. "I do not know. But she is not at rest. She died. She tells me she died. And she has been looking for someone to help her. She attached herself to this doll because it looked like her, because it made her feel safe." I felt a strange wave of pity wash over me. A dead girl, a lonely dead girl, trapped between worlds, looking for comfort, looking for help. How could I be afraid of something so sad? "Can we help her?" I asked. "Can we do something?" Mrs. Beth was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I think if you let her stay, if you give her a home, she will be at peace. She just wants to be loved. She just wants to belong. So we let her stay." Looking back, I realize how stupid that was, how dangerous, but at the time it seemed like the right thing to do, the compassionate thing. We were nursing students. We were supposed to help people, and Annabel, whoever she really was, seemed like she needed help. We started talking to the doll, asking her questions, and she would respond. Through the notes, through the movement, we would ask her yes or no questions, and if the answer was yes, she would leave the doll in one corner of the room. If no, another corner. For a while, things seemed almost normal as living with a possessed doll can be. We got used to her. We even started to feel protective of her. Angie would say good morning to her. Lou would leave cookies nearby. I would tell her about my day when I came home from the hospital. But then things changed. It started with the scratches. Lou woke up one morning with 3 long scratches across her chest, deep enough to draw blood. She had no memory of how they got there. She had not dreamed of scratching herself, had not felt anything in the night, but there they were, 3 parallel lines, like something had clawed at her. We told ourselves she must have done it in her sleep. Maybe her fingernails, maybe a rough edge on her nightgown. We made excuses because the alternative was too terrible to consider, but the scratches kept appearing, on Lou, on Angie, and eventually on me. Always 3 lines, always in places we could not have reached ourselves. On our backs, on the backs of our legs, places that made no sense. And the notes changed too. They were no longer sad and pleading. They were angry, threatening. I found one that said, "You will not leave me." I found another that said, "Mine now." The doll's face seemed to change as well. I know that sounds impossible. It was just paint and stitches. It could not actually change, but I swear on everything I hold sacred. Her smile got wider. Those black button eyes seemed to glint with something that had not been there before, something hungry. I called Mrs. Beth again, but when I told her what was happening, she refused to come. "I made a mistake," she said, her voice shaking. "Whatever is in that doll, it is not a little girl. It is not a human spirit at all. I think it was pretending. I think it told us what we wanted to hear, so we would let it stay." "What do you mean?" I asked, my hand gripping the phone so hard the plastic creaked. "If it is not a girl, what is it?" Mrs. Beth was silent for a long moment. Then she said one word that made my entire body go numb. "Demon." She hung up. I stood there in my kitchen, the phone dead in my hand, the doll sitting on the counter behind me. I could feel it watching. I could feel something behind those button eyes, something that was laughing at us, at our stupidity, at how easily we had been tricked. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the doll out the window. But when I turned around, when I looked at her, I could not move. My legs would not work. My arms would not work. I was frozen, paralyzed by a terror so deep and so complete that it felt like drowning. The doll just sat there, smiling. That night, Lou almost died. She was sleeping on our couch. She had been too scared to go back to her own apartment. And in the middle of the night, Angie and I woke up to the sound of choking. We ran into the living room and found Lou, her face purple, her eyes bulging, her hands clawing at her throat. But there was nothing there, nothing we could see. Her body lifted off the couch, just a few inches, but enough. Enough to see that something had her, something we could not see, something that was strangling her. Angie was screaming. I was screaming, and then I saw the doll. She was on the coffee table right next to Lou, and I swear to you, her arms were raised, her cloth hands reaching toward Lou's throat. I grabbed the doll. I did not think. I just acted. I grabbed her and threw her across the room. She hit the wall with a soft thump that somehow sounded like a laugh. Lou dropped back onto the couch, gasping, coughing, sobbing. We did not sleep the rest of that night. We sat together in the corner of the living room, as far from the doll as we could get, holding each other, praying, begging for morning to come. The next day I called a priest. His name was Father Cook. He was young for a priest, maybe 30, with serious eyes and hands that did not shake when he picked up the doll. He listened to our story without interrupting. without judgment, and when we were done, he nodded slowly. "This is not a human spirit," he said, confirming what Mrs. Beth had told us. "This is something else, something inhuman. It pretended to be a little girl named Annabelle to gain your sympathy, to get permission to enter your lives. Demons need permission. They need an invitation, and you gave it one." I felt sick. We had invited it. We had opened the door. We had let this thing into our home because we thought we were helping a sad little ghost. And all along it had been manipulating us, waiting. "Can you help us?" Angie asked, her voice cracking. Father Cook looked at the doll for a long time, his jaw tight, his eyes hard. Then he said, "I need to take this to someone who can deal with it properly. There are people, investigators, who specialize in cases like this. They will know what to do." He took the doll that day. I watched him carry her out of our apartment, and I felt something, a strange sensation, like a rubber band snapping inside my chest, like a connection being severed. And I heard something too. Just before the door closed, I heard a sound, very faint, like a child crying or laughing. I could not tell which. Father Cook gave the doll to a couple named Ed and Lorraine Warren. They were paranormal investigators, the real thing, not frauds or charlatans. They had been dealing with cases like this for years. They knew what they were doing. I met them once. A few weeks later, they came to our apartment to follow up, to make sure the activity had stopped. Lorraine was a gentle woman with sad eyes. Ed was solid and reassuring. They told us we had done the right thing by calling for help, by not trying to destroy the doll ourselves. Destroying it might have released whatever was inside, Ed said. This way, we can contain it, keep it locked up where it cannot hurt anyone. "Where is it now?" I asked. Ed and Lorraine exchanged a look. Then Lorraine said, "We have a room in our home, a special room, blessed and protected. We keep artifacts there, things that are too dangerous to be out in the world. She is there now, behind glass, where she cannot move, cannot write her notes, cannot hurt anyone." I should have felt relieved, and part of me did. But there was another part, a small cold part in the back of my mind, that wondered if glass and prayers would really be enough to stop something like that. The nightmares started a few days after the doll was gone. I would dream of her, of those button eyes watching me, of that painted smile getting wider and wider until it split her cloth face in half. I would dream of notes, hundreds of notes, covering every surface of my apartment, all of them written in red, all of them saying the same thing: "I am still here." I would wake up screaming, and sometimes in those first few seconds of waking, I would see her standing at the foot of my bed, her head tilted, her arms reaching. Then I would blink, and she would be gone. Just a trick of the light, I told myself. Just my mind playing games. But sometimes, even now, 50 years later, I am not so sure. I finished nursing school. I built a life. I got married, had children, grew old. But I never forgot that doll. I never forgot what it felt like to live with something inhuman, to be hunted by something that wore innocence like a mask. The Warrens kept the doll in their museum for decades. They put up a sign warning people not to open the case, not to touch the glass. They said she was the most dangerous item in their collection. They said they had recorded instances of the doll moving even inside her case. Even with all their precautions, I visited once. I do not know why. Maybe I needed to prove to myself that she was really contained. Maybe some sick part of me missed her. But I drove to Connecticut, and I paid my money, and I walked through the Warrens Occult Museum, and there she was, sitting in a glass case, surrounded by crosses and holy water, exactly the same as I remembered. The red yarn hair, the triangle nose, those black button eyes. But her smile was different. It was wider now, much wider, stretching almost to her ears. And as I stood there, as I stared at her through the glass, I could have sworn she winked at me. I left immediately, my hands shaking so badly. I could barely grip my car keys. I drove home and I did not look back. That was 20 years ago. Lorraine Warren died in 2019. Ed before her, and now the museum is closed. The artifacts dispersed, and I do not know where the doll is. Maybe she is still in that case, still behind that glass, still waiting. Maybe she has found a new home, a new victim, someone who will look at her and see a harmless Raggedy Ann instead of the monster wearing her skin. I try not to think about it. I try not to remember the way she moved, the way she wrote those notes, the way she almost killed my friend. But some nights, when the house is quiet and the dark presses in, I hear something, a sound like the scratching of a pen on paper, coming from somewhere I cannot see. And I wonder if she remembers me too. I wonder if she is still writing notes, still asking for help, still pretending to be a sad little girl, while something ancient and hungry smiles behind those button eyes, waiting, just waiting.